if you're gonna take anything away from this video, let it be this. The Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC bundle, which includes the recently released Teal Mask DLC and the upcoming Indigo Disc DLC, are not worth your money. Do not buy it. Despite some cool new story bits, and the return of a bunch of old Pokemon, and a couple of other random things to do and see, the game's performance saps the enjoyment out of it all. The disastrous launch of the base game has been matched in poor quality here, and despite somewhat enjoying what I played on the basis of it being Pokemon alone, you really shouldn't buy this. It's a woefully unpolished technical mess full of the same terrible graphics, ugly textures, massive frame rate drops, clipping, unbelievable hitboxes, lazy fades to black, unruly lag spikes, woeful draw distance, and pitiful animations that were all in the base game too. As a product alone, I cannot recommend it. It is barely functional and pulls you out of the experience every couple of minutes as something goes wrong. I mean, if you don't believe me, just watch the video. You're gonna see it throughout. There's no way I can avoid showing footage that demonstrates how poorly it runs. And every time you see a hiccup, take note of it, because I know that I certainly did. Gamefreak has not been given enough time to deliver technically sound and finished games for a while now, since Generation 7 I'd say. Let this team take a break for Generation 10 so that they can deliver something truly special on hopefully some new, more powerful hardware. Pokemon is so eager to pump out some sort of gaming product every single year that the quality of those products has diminished tenfold. Never has that been more obvious than in Generation 9. Even given a chance to make a smaller world like Kitakami, using everything they learned from crafting Paldea for the base game, we still get a broken, dysfunctional piece of garbage. And I have no doubt that the Indigo Disc DLC to come will be more the same. I already bought the bundle pack for review purposes, but I really hope many others don't. The only way to get through to these companies is purchasing power, and it's the only way we're going to get some much needed change. Okay, with that rant out of the way, let's talk a bit more about what is offered in the Teal Mask, because if the technical problems were cleaned up, you'd have a decent chunk of new content to really engage with, probably around 10 to 12 hours or so if you do literally everything. It all begins with your character being invited on a trip to a new region, Kitakami, a land of tradition. You're chaperoned by a woman named Miss Briar, who teaches at the illustrious Blueberry Academy, found in Unova, one of a few references to that region, winking at possible remakes on the way. Upon arriving in the new region, you're set free to start collecting a bunch of the new Pokemon reintroduced in this DLC, with a lot of love going towards Generation 2 and 3, at least that's what I noticed the most. This portion of Kitakami is defined by the massive Oni Mountain residing in the center. It dwarfs all the nearby biomes, including wildlands, a forest, a swamp, grasslands, and also badlands. Heck, you can even go into Oni Mountain to find more Pokemon. There's enough diversity in the explorable areas to feel unique from each other without sacrificing the believability of the world. Tradition is what defines the people of Kitakami. The main questline revolves around uncovering the lore that defines the people of Masui Town. You're sent out on a journey, accompanied by two students from Blueberry Academy, a brother and sister named Kieran and Carmine, to discover the history of this land. Along the way, you come to learn the story of the Loyal Three. This newest trilogy of legendary Pokemon is said to have saved the town from an evil ogre residing in the nearby mountain. In an epic clash, the three were able to overcome the ogre against the odds, but ended up perishing in the process. As a result, even centuries later, the townsfolk revel in the bravery displayed by the Loyal Three for saving the town and banishing the ogre to its den. Folks even warn children about going into the mountain out of fear of them coming face to face with that ogre. And really, I feel like it's impossible to assess this DLC without talking about the story in full, so I'm gonna get into spoiler territory now. so if you're weary of that, it might be a good time to skip ahead or click off the video. Anyway, throughout the story, you'll come to uncover that the inverse is actually true. The ogre is actually a peaceful creature, brought to this land by a mysterious trainer so many years ago. Despite being shunned by the villagers for being outsiders, the duo would occasionally meander down to the town during the masked festival where they could blend in by concealing their identity. That is, until one day, the Loyal Three attacked their home in the mountain, stealing away 3 of the 4 masks and supposedly killing the trainer in the process. Returning home, the ogre found signs of a struggle, donned the remaining mask, and made for the town in search of its friend. Instead, it found the Loyal Three and defeated them. Divorced of the full context, the townsfolk saw this as an act of aggression and came to view the ogre as an evil creature and the Loyal Three as heroes who had protected the town. For years, this misguided event brewed and eventually became the cultural backbone of Masui Town. Throughout the main questline, you end up revealing the truth to the villagers, defeating the mischievous 3 Pokemon, and restoring the ogre's reputation. The story contains some twists and turns, and even a cliffhanger ending that I haven't gotten to yet, but what spoils the whole thing for me is how the DLC handles the theme of challenging tradition. Perhaps this is due to children being the target demographic, but uprooting centuries of belief in a matter of a day hardly seems possible. The townsfolk of Masui are so accepting of an alternate version of their history and culture, told to them by a child nonetheless, that it makes the whole thing feel flat. There was a real opportunity to make it feel more genuine, by having the Loyal Three, more specifically known as Monkey Dory, Okidogi, and Pheasantipity, attack the town and having the ogre, named Ogerpon, save them. As it is, it just feels disingenuous and cheap. It assumes the townsfolk have the same information that the player does and has them act accordingly. It just seems misguided. These people would not drop hundreds of years of tradition just because a child told them they were wrong. And as a result, it just all seems like a mess, and the story doesn't deliver any real thematic impact. Instead, the true punch of the DLC comes in the player's interactions with Kieran and Carmine, the brother and sister from Blueberry Academy. The game does something interesting with this duo. Over the first half of the experience, Kieran is much more friendly towards you. He's a shy boy who's happy to have a new friend, while Carmine is much more aggressive towards the player, attempting to deny access to the town and generally being pretty mean to most people. However, as you come to learn more and more, the roles flip. This takes place when their grandfather tells you and Carmine the true story of how Ogerpon is the one who should be viewed favorably, not the Loyal Three. Kieran overhears this conversation, and when you and his sister lie to him about having learned the truth, he starts to have a breakdown. You and Carmine become closer, while Kieran takes on a darker tone. And at the very end of the story, when you get a chance to catch Ogerpon, Kieran is very vindictive and jealous of you. It's a plot thread that will be carried over into the next DLC, and I must say, I absolutely love that. It gives some intrigue and anticipation for the upcoming content, tying both pieces together, but more importantly, it makes Kieran one of the most complex characters in the Pokemon games. In a series where so many NPCs roll over like a dog wanting its belly scratched, he stands firm against you. When you defeat him and tarnish his goal, he doesn't just say, well, you're the better trainer, and everything I had to live for is over, but you know what? Who cares? You're great, I'm still happy, everything's fine, and you're the best. No, he stays pissed off as Ogerpon joins your party and fights alongside of you. And because the way the story is told, you can see where he's coming from. He's loved the ogre his whole life, always believing that it got a bad reputation over nothing. And when he's proved correct, he's devastated when his loyalty to Ogerpon is greeted by it choosing you to be its trainer. He vows to get stronger and stronger to the point that it consumes him and sets up a storyline for the next DLC. I think that's brilliant, and I wish Pokemon could find more ways to develop characters like this. Stop stroking the player's ego at every turn. make me feel kinda in the wrong for catching Ogerpon instead of letting Kieran have it. So kudos for that, please let it continue. The actual battle with Ogerpon is an exciting one, as you get to see its true power. It dons 4 masks, which allows it to change forms, transforming its typing and boosting stats in the process of terastallizing. It was the best fight in the DLC if you ask me, but that's because all the others in the story are either against Carmine or Kieran. Their teams get stronger each time you fight them, but it does get stale after the 3rd or 4th fight. I can't help but feel that when telling stories like the one found here and in the Isle of Armor DLC, Gamefreak struggles to tie Pokemon's mechanics into the story. Battles often feel arbitrary, both mechanically and for their narrative purposes. There's at least 3 times in this DLC where they want to battle you just for the sake of battling you. And with so much diversity in Pokemon, their looks, and their movesets, there's a ton of opportunity to use that for character expression. Which Pokemon the trainers decide to use, and the moves they have them learn, can tell you a lot about the trainer, but Game Freak continuously drops the ball on this. It would be a great way to weave the mechanics and storytelling together, but that just doesn't happen here. Just a small example of this, you can find Rockruff in this DLC, and I think it would have been cool if Kieran used one, and he has Rockruff at first, and then it evolves into the normal, happy Lycanroc. But then later, as he starts to turn to a more dark side, perhaps he has another Rockruff that evolves into the Midnight form, where it's a little bit more darker and aggressive. Like, use that to support the arc that Kieran is going through. But no, they never do anything like that, and I don't understand why. So, as a result, the main questline ends up being a bit of a mixed bag. A series of uninspired battles, an overly simplified plotline, and a handful of underdeveloped and underexplained Titan battles is paired up with the return of a bunch of older Pokemon and some decent character building to deliver a so-so experience. Of course, that's not all the content that is available, so let's look at the side stuff. The biggest point of emphasis to bring up here would be the Blood Moon Ursaluna questline. There's an NPC who will battle you and have you take some pictures in order to encounter Blood Moon Ursaluna, one of a few Hisuian Pokemon found in the DLC. The design of this Pokemon is just cool. Like, I love it, I think they nailed it. But honestly, the whole questline is spoiled by the restriction placed on it. You can't start this questline until you've registered 150 Pokemon in the Kitakami Pokédex. There's 200 entries total, and if you completed the Paldean Dex, you'll have about 60 entries to go in the best case scenario to reach that 150. If you're like me, you'll have about 25 Pokemon registered instead of 90, and you'll need 125 more to engage with this content. I'm gonna be honest with you, I couldn't find the time to complete this questline despite putting some effort into it. I caught a bunch of the Pokemon around Kitakami and even evolved a few, including the new Poltergeist, which I really enjoyed using. However, many of the Pokemon here evolve by items, or trading, or affection, which is a sneaky way of increasing the game's playtime, and perhaps even the incentive to buy Nintendo Online. The point is, I got to about 90 and bowed out to return to Starfield and Lies of P. I can't fathom why this questline had to be locked away behind this requirement. It's just an artificial way of ballooning the DLC's runtime and feels like a total waste of time to players who just want to experience the story content that they paid for. I don't want to catch them all, just let me do the story stuff. That was frustrating, but if you do meet the requirements pretty early, the questline seemed pretty cool, if not a little short given the requirement. Outside of this, there's another questline that you can do at any time involving a rich couple. All you really end up doing is tracking them down across Kitakami and Paldea, battling them a bunch of times, and being rewarded with lots of money and valuable items. It's a slog, but hey, I guess more money is nice. The rest of the content is less of quest lines and more of checklist type material, including finishing the Pokédex, grabbing a Sinnoh starter, defeating a tougher group of trainers, catching the Loyal 3, checking out new customization items, and just playing the shit out of the Ogre Alston minigame. That's what we all want to do, right? Nothing too worthwhile here outside of some Generation 4 nostalgia, but hey, if you're that big of a fan of Pokemon, there's at least a bit more to do. Completing the Pokédex will take the most amount of time after the main story, but again, I couldn't be bothered. It just proves to me that Nintendo could put all the Pokemon in the base game, or at least more than they have, but are instead holding out to sell them back to us for more money. So yeah, that's my assessment of the Pokemon Teal Mask DLC. I somewhat enjoyed my time with it, but the constant technical problems means that I absolutely cannot recommend this. They've now had 10 months to patch and clean up the base game and some of the issues, but instead, we just get delivered more garbage that's a Charmander's tail away from exploding my Switch to smithereens. If you can suffer past all those issues, constantly pulling you out of the experience, then you'll find a story that's better than Sword and Shield's Isle of Armor DLC. It's nothing revolutionary, but it's not bad for the low level of storytelling Pokemon is accustomed to. Oh god, you know what I just realized? Man, I really hope they don't screw up Black and White's excellent storytelling in the remakes, but only time's gonna tell on that. Man, that's a depressing note to end this video on. But anyway, yeah, that's about it for this video. If you're curious, I will be covering the Indigo Disc DLC 2 when that drops later this year. I already bought the bundle, so I might as well. Anyway, stay tuned for more videos. It may be a little while because of how big Lies of P and especially Starfield are. Makes me sad to say, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have time for Baldur's Gate 3 or Cyberpunk 2077's DLC. But who knows, time will tell. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing for more. Follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp. Join our Discord, the link is below. And as always, guys, have a nice day and take care.